Looking great.
We're now transmitting live to the world. Thanks for that, John.
Yep, there we go.
Okay, fantastic. So we'll make a start then. So first of all, thank you all for joining us tonight. My name's Aaron. I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. We're currently live streaming via our YouTube channel, and throughout the meeting tonight, Becky will be live tweeting updates. I'd like to ask, if possible, for all participants, that's councillors and staff, please mute yourselves until I ask you to speak. Please use the electric blue hand by clicking on the bottom of your screen and selecting the blue hand icon if you wish to speak. Would you please vote using the blue hand so that the vote can be recorded by Paul? Please forgive me if I need to end the discussion and go to a vote if time is short this evening. We currently have 8 attendees present, although I do believe we have more registered, so that may change as we evening. Please can I also ask you to pose questions through the Q&A board and we will patch you in so that you can speak. Rachel's going to be managing the sessions. As always, Paul will be clerk for the evening and Laura will be taking the minutes. So if we can move to our first item on the agenda, which is always 3-part in nature, which is the apologies for absence, declaration of councillors' interests and approval of the minutes from the last meeting. So first of all, Paul, do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Yeah, we have apologies from Nick Dove and Maxine Crawley.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Next part of this agenda item is declaration of councillors' interests. Do we have any declarations from colleagues, please? I'm going to actually declare an interest in item number 4 on the agenda, which is the access to King Street, simply because we currently have an office in King Street and therefore trade from that location. I don't think it's a pecuniary interest, it's purely a general interest, but I thought it was wise to make people aware of that. And then finally, we have the approval of the minutes from the last meeting on the 7th of October 2020. All councillors should have read those. They've been circulated and are on the website. Can I have a councillor to propose those, please? Rich, and somebody to second. John, thank you. So, councillors, all those in favour of those minutes being correct, please?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. That's unanimous.
Fantastic. Thanks, Paul. Thank you all. So moving on then, we will go to item number 2 on the agenda, which is questions and comments from the public and councillors. And as usual, we will start off with Freetown councillors before moving to district and then county and then members of the public. So do we have any questions or comments from Freetown councillors, please? I'll take that as a no. Fantastic. Therefore, do we have any questions from our district councillor colleagues?
Doesn't look like it at the moment.
So I've got Shane Collins has raised his hand. Rachel.
Rachel, can you tap Shane in, please?
Yeah.
Unmute. Ah, okay.
Hi, Shane. Can you go ahead?
Yes. Oh, great. Yeah, a couple of things. On East Hill, Ros White, the Lib Dem leader, is going to give a statement explaining exactly what a pause means in the Cabinet's deliberation on East Hill, which will be given out on Monday, just to clarify what a pause actually means. Froome Hoedown, we're going the last Sunday of each month, and then any other time people want to. And if any councillors have got particularly weedy bits in their wards, do just put the location on the Froome Hoedown webpage and ask or offer for its assistance, and we'll hopefully get round to that. And there's an email coming to councillors about planting trees, in particular Bramley apple trees, in bits of Mendip green space throughout Froome. Again, if there's any areas in your ward, I've sent you a list of Mendip land holdings showing green spaces in your ward. If there's anywhere you think might be applicable for a Bramley apple tree, which should in 30 years time produce about just under half a ton of apples a year. So it's good for locking in carbon, and it's good for food in the future. I think that was it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Shane. Do any colleagues have any questions or anything they want to just ask Shane while we've got him? Anita?
Sorry, Shane, could you just repeat who we talked to about the Bramley apple trees?
I've sent you an email, or hopefully Paul or Peter will send it on to you, and just get back to me with a location for them, and then I'll endeavour to get some whips.
We've got a lovely piece of green land on Bramley Drive, just around the corner from you, which would be lovely. Okay, thank you.
Great.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Shane. Anyone else? Ali?
Oh, that's right. I was just saying Shane's got this high-pitched noise, but he's just muted himself.
Okay, no worries. Brilliant. Thank you, Shane. That's fantastic information. Do we have any other district colleagues who wish to ask any questions and make any comments? Doesn't look like it. So do we have any colleagues from county who would like to ask any questions or come with any comments, please? I think John or Martin are raising their hands, so that's fine. Thank you. Then we'll move on to the next. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. So any questions or comments from the public? Excellent. So we will move on to item number 3 on the agenda, which is to decide on the future direction of the Froome Community Grants process. So I will assume this is in the capable hands of Kate.
Yes, hello. I'm not used to having this slot on the agenda. Taken me by surprise tonight.
Well, I didn't want to give you the graveyard slot as usual.
So as you will have seen from the paper, we've been working with Public Square to look at how the grants process in Froome and that is administered by Freetown Town Council might be improved as we go forwards to better meet the needs of all the organisations that we're working with. The process that we've gone through with Public Square has been absolutely facilitated by them. Started with a small working group, and that working group designed a larger working group session, which I think we had about 25 participants in, which was really well attended. And over the course of those 3 or 4 sessions, through from the small working group to the large working group, we have, as a group, built some consensus about how FTC's funding could be administered and distributed through grants. You'll see in the paper that there are some kind of heads of terms, really, that stand out things in terms of the community grants process. And broadly, the group felt that it was really important to have a community grant scheme with up to £3,000 available. For the last year or so, we've had up to £2,000 available through that, but with up to £3,000 available, and that we open that as soon as possible. So we know that many organisations have been really well supported through COVID emergency funding, but that is coming to an end. And then there are also lots of organisations that have just been quiet really over the last 6 months for whatever reason. They paused their activity, but they're starting to plan for next year. And for people to be able to have some financial security going into the new financial year, it's important for us to open that. So we have a budget of currently £60,000 remaining in this financial year for our grants process. And that's what we're proposing to use by opening a new community grant scheme. Actually, it's unlikely to be hugely different from our previous community grant scheme. So there was a lot of discussion about what was important to include, about the criteria that were important to the wider group. And, you know, the group actually themselves have really debated and challenged each other a lot about the pros and cons of various aspects, not least how to define the criteria. So they are outlined in the paper you have here, and also outlined here is how applications will be made. And again, we had maybe thought that it was time for a bit of a radical change in terms of the application process, but organisations would really like to fill in an application form. They'd like to be able to have support to fill in an application form. They'd like to be able to tap into FTC's sort of staff time to fill in application forms, to talk them through it, to talk them through what's going to be possible, what's likely to be funded. And obviously decisions aren't made by staff, they're made by councillors. And there's a suggestion that perhaps a couple of residents might join a panel of councillors to make those decisions. And ideally we'd look to do that on a rolling basis, so it'd be more than 3 times a year. But obviously currently they're signed off by this committee. So we just need to look at some of the detail around that. So the proposal is to open a grant round on this basis in the new year, so as soon after Christmas as possible, and to use that as a trial. So it means that we can play around a little bit with the application form, with the actual decision-making process. So we could trial having a couple of residents on a panel with councillors while decisions are being made. We can trial inviting potential recipients of grants to listen to live feedback. That's something that many organisations were quite keen to have. And then, so that's the first part of the paper and the first part of the grants. There was a much larger discussion that was too big to have in that session, really, about multi-year agreements or large grants. And of course, every organisation in Frome would love to have a multi-year agreement, to have the security of year-on-year funding. But obviously, with around about 120 organisations, well, that's quite an enormous budget, potentially. So the group were really realistic and really challenged each other around this. And we're saying, okay, that's not feasible. There was one train of thought that maybe organisations might receive a large grant 1 year, but then not be able to come back to the town council for 2 or 3 years, with the expectation that that large grant would see them through those 2 or 3 years, but they wouldn't have to keep reapplying or keep reporting. So, but that's still all up in the air, and there was broad consensus that was more discussion required. So going to the recommendations, there are 3 recommendations here: that we open the community grants in the new year and we let that run as a trial until March. Actually, Laura, have you got the recommendations to bring them up? That'd be helpful, thank you. The second one is that the grants co-design group continue to meet and really flesh out what a multi-year or large grant might look like for future years, and that we would bring the proposed large grant allocation process and reflections on the community grants back to Town Matters for approval in February, ahead of the new financial year. So there's a whistle-stop tour, but I'm imagining there might be some questions.
Fantastic, thanks Kate, that's brilliant. Before I throw this open to questions from our wider councillor group, I just wondered, Mark, whether or not, as chair of the grants advisory group, and I think you worked on the small co-design group as well, whether you wanted to add anything?
Thanks, Andy. I was going to wait for the questions to see if I had to step in and help Kate out there, but as we're speaking now, yes, thanks to Kate, thanks to Public Square and all those who've attended, both councillors and members of the public and those who've received grants in the past and not received grants in the past. It's been a very useful exercise. The first one or two were a bit confusing, wondering where we were, but I think we're starting to get somewhere now. We've certainly got to this stage. People are asking me already from various units what they might get next year. It's totally not known because we haven't decided the process yet. So Kate is exactly right. The impression that we're getting, that everyone's getting, is everybody would like a multi-year agreement. Obviously, we don't know what that's not going to be possible. But we are working towards the large grants. And as Kate's paper says, we'll be discussing that in the new year. And as councillors, we have to discuss the whole budget very shortly anyway. So that this will be a very big part of our discussions on that. But I'll wait and see what other questions we've got to see if I have to step in.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Kate, as well. John, please.
Okay. Oh, hi there. Yeah, thank you very much. So I have three sort of questions and a comment. The first is I'd just be interested to hear about the reflection on the process of consultation on this, because we always talk about consultation. I'd like to know how it went. Mark mentioned a bit of it. I didn't attend this, but also how representative we felt it was of the broad population rather than the people who always come to meetings. So that's the first comment. The second comment is I really welcome this idea of impact measures, and I think we should help our the grantees understand that, maybe by bringing more impact measures into town council's own work and funding for different programs to understand that a bit better. Third comment is the idea of having residents on the committee or part of the committee. I welcome that. I think it's just a question about how we choose those people so that actually it is representative of the whole group. And I'm talking about like what is the grants co-design group. Is that a representative group? Is it adequately representative, and how can we improve that? But basically, those are the questions I have out there just to hear. I'd love to hear from those who have participated in the process, but I support the recommendations.
Shall I answer the first of those, the first and last question, John, in terms of the co-design group being representative? Actually, it was, and it was truly representative of the organisations that we worked with. So we worked really hard to make sure that we had really small local organisations represented and large organisations represented, and I think everybody in between. And those of you that were part of that, I'm looking to Anne and Mark in particular, I think, and Ali. I think that was a true reflection. So I think the organisations were well represented. What we didn't have were lots of members of the public that weren't associated with an organisation. So, but actually we hadn't really worked really hard to bring the wider public on board, because it's, in terms of the grants process, we really want to make that work for the organisations that we're funding. And what we have found in the last couple of years is some of our application processes have been clunky, things haven't been out there, and I think that's really represented in what they've said they want and what we've concluded, and also working on the basis that they are representatives of a much wider cohort. So hopefully that worked. There were definitely some challenges, and as Mark intimated, because we were co-designing a co-design day, that was really tricky to get our heads around, because we just wanted to get stuck in to co-designing the grants, and we didn't want to be talking about how we were going to be engaging lots of other people. So that was a kind of extra step of participation that we're definitely not used to, and we needed to familiarise ourselves with. So that will be interesting to kind of play that out in another context away from grants in the future and see what that's like. But so yeah, there were some challenges, but actually having the sessions facilitated by another organisation really helped, because they're having that sort of external facilitation was definitely a bonus in the process, I'd say.
Okay, but I mean, just quick follow-up. The criteria are very, very broad. So anything can be funded, which is fantastic. I have no problem with that. But maybe that's something we can think about later on.
Well, the one debate that that really stuck in my head, and others will have others, but was, okay, so what do we do when an animal charity is coming to us, and you know, is an animal charity as valid to fund
Exactly.
as a and that was really interesting, because actually I'm not sure we have a history of funding charities. Well, we haven't probably had very many applications in the past, but yeah, and we had thought that maybe we would end up with those very specific criteria being more specific. They're probably quite, they probably do reflect still our work programme, which has been one of our challenges in the past, in that the criteria are so broad. But you know, that was definitely one of the things that I think maybe surprised us all, that we've kind of landed with still requiring to have such a big criteria, because that's where everything fits. So yeah, and there were some really good debates and some really good rationale for balancing, say, food or somebody's mental health with the arts and business support, you know, the whole mix really, and how everything works together to ultimately support the well-being of our residents.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that, Kate. Sorry, Sheila with a question, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to know why you're waiting till the new year. Why can't you just start it now?
In part because one of the things that was really well, firstly, I haven't actually written the application form. And secondly, one of the things that organisations said was really, really important was that they could have staff time to help them talk through the application form. And given that lots of our staff are going to be on holiday from the end of next week, it seemed not very sensible to open it now when we wouldn't have that support in place, but opening it in the new year when we will be there to answer questions and guide people through it is more sensible.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, do we have any questions or anything from the public, Rachel? Brilliant stuff. Okay, so I think we can move on to voting on the recommendations. Paul, just a bit of advice. Are we taking these 3 recommendations one by one, or can we vote on all of them at the same time?
They don't appear to be contentious, so unless anyone violently objects, take them all together.
Fantastic. Okay, so with that in mind, if I can have a councillor to propose the 3 recommendations from Kate, I'll take Mark for that, and then somebody to second that, please. Anne, fantastic, thank you. So for all councillors in favour of those recommendations, please.
That's unanimous.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you once again, Kate, and for all the work you've put into that so far. It's brilliant. So we will now take item number 4 on the agenda, which is to decide whether to make King Street access only. And I believe this is in the hands of Peter, please.
Thank you. Evening, everyone. I have a few slides to accompany this item. So, Laura, I wondered if you could bring those up, please. Okay, if you could move to the next slide, please. So, a little bit of background on this. As many of you will be aware, when the marketplace was closed in the summer, access only was possible in both Palmer Street and King Street. And that was at the time designed to encourage active travel and social distancing. And that restriction was lifted when the marketplace was reopened through traffic at the beginning of October. And at the time, the thought was that we would encourage the town centre to get back to normal after a long period of disruption. I think, though, that what emerged was a concern that possibly the environment for pedestrians and cyclists in King Street had worsened as a result of reopening the road. And they were also, and there was also some concern that it may be difficult to observe social distancing, especially in view of the narrow pavements in King Street and Church Street. So councillors agreed through an email ballot a few weeks ago to actually go out to consultation with a view to reinstating an access-only arrangement in King Street. So closed to through traffic, but enabling access for deliveries and residents potentially. That certainly was something that was put to people in the consultation. The reasons that were quoted in the consultation were to support social distancing, to give shoppers who are walking and cycling a safer experience, and to give shoppers the confidence to come back into the town centre and shop local. And as you'll see from the slide there, a total of 100 businesses and residents in the area, and I include in the area King Street, Church Street and Eagle Lane, they were consulted between the 26th of November and the 3rd of December. Next slide, please. So these were the outcomes from the consultation. There were 25 out of the 100 who responded. 15 said no, they were against the idea of temporary closure of King Street to through traffic, allowing for access, and 10 were for it. So that's 60-40 against in percentage terms. Next slide, please. For those who indicated that the closure should go ahead, there was a view here illustrated by this graph that the vast majority were in favour of residents and deliveries being exempted, but also a significant proportion wanted to see disabled badge holders exempted too. Next slide. And then there was a question about for how long the measure should be introduced or reintroduced. Here it was indicated that some 23.81% of respondents felt that 6 weeks was an appropriate period. Just under that percentage thought that it should continue until further consultation has taken place. And there was also a significant other category. Many of those actually were against any kind of temporary closure. So I've included some of those responses really for completeness. The reality is that the main outcome of this consultation is that the majority of respondents were against the idea of reinstatement of the closure. Next slide, please. Just a few comments here, or rather an indication of some of the comments that came back from respondents. So it's interesting that the residents who responded to this consultation were mainly for the idea of a reinstatement. And they quoted a perception of greater safety, a more pleasant environment for pedestrians. But the businesses that responded predominantly reacted quite strongly and were mainly against. And these were a number of the reasons that were quoted for being against. Many were concerned about the impact on trade, particularly passing trade, and they were reflecting very much on the impact of the closure when the marketplace was closed. Some indicated that they were aware that King Street is an essential route to the Marks and Spencer, and that generates significant footfall within that part of the town centre. Many indicated that they thought that social distancing would be difficult anyway, with the need to keep deliveries going, really due to the narrowness of the pavements in King Street. And some indicated that they thought that Vicarage Street and the junction with Christchurch Street East and Vicarage Street would become even more congested as a result of the temporary closure of King Street. So just giving you a flavour really for some of the reasons why either residents or businesses voted in the way that they did through the consultation. So that's the end of my presentation on this, and obviously I'll take any questions before you consider the recommendation.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for being so comprehensive as usual. I think I'll kick off the first question if I can use my ability to do so. One of the things that was raised in terms of keeping or looking to close King Street was the perception of safety. And I believe we requested via yourself information from Jeff Bunting at Highways regarding the accident log and details. Did we get anything back from that, please?
I didn't receive that, unfortunately, in time for this meeting. I'm not aware that it has a significant accident record in King Street, but I can't be confident of that answer.
Fantastic. Okay, thanks a lot, Peter. Any questions from anyone else? John, please.
Yeah, no, I guess the question is, for this recommendation, where is the demand? And I think it was useful to have the consultation to understand where the demand might be. But where is the evidence? And I think that echoes what Andy was just asking about. Where is the evidence that this is required? But for me, it's this confidence issue. I can't swallow that closing King Street to cars, except for access, will have any impact whatsoever on consumers or shoppers' confidence. All it's going to do is create another impediment to coming into Frome. So I would echo that. And so I think that's important. So I think we should be listening to residents and business owners, particularly in the center of town. You can't just shut off roads. They're necessary. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Paul, please.
Thanks, Andy. I could say quite a lot on this. I could probably go on for the rest of the meeting. I just like to start really just by saying that when I put myself up for town councillor 2 years ago, whenever it was, I did so really kind of inspired by the reputation of the town council and the particularly town council for being quite radical and progressive in their policies and their actions. And I have to say that my experience of this particular issue has been really disappointing. If you go back to town council policy over many years now, 5, 6, well beyond that, but certainly as far back as the town design statement and the neighbourhood plan, it's all very, very pro cycling and walking. I mean, I can give you some examples from the neighbourhood plan, town centre policy. Reduce the impact of traffic movement from vehicles and reorder priorities between motorised vehicles, cycles and pedestrians. That's in the neighbourhood plan. Also in the neighbourhood plan, number 1 key objective of transport policy in the neighbourhood plan, to give priority in the town centre to pedestrians and cyclists. In the Frome Town Council Transport Strategy published on our website, it says encourage and support traffic management measures to reduce car usage. it also says identifying clear and safe routes for pedestrians and cycling as part of remodelling the Frome Town Centre. So all these things have been Frome Town Council policy for a number of years. It's still in our policy. It's all been backed up by a number of feedback and consultation exercises in the town, including this year the COVID recovery survey, in which I think walking and cycling was at least second most popular response. And there has also been over 1,000 responses or comments on the walk ride map, the commonplace map, basically from people wanting better conditions for walking and cycling in Frome. Now, this King Street is just a small example, but it's actually a really easy win for us because we don't have to battle with county or highways. They're actually for it. They're up for it. They're very happy for us to restrict the traffic in King Street. But for some reason, we have chosen, against my wishes, to basically engage in a meaningless consultation with residents and businesses in the area. We've consulted with 100 people. Of them, 25 have responded. 15 people have against. So we're saying that actually we're going to throw out all our policies and neighbourhood plan, the design statements, etc., our strategy, because 15 people don't want it to happen in this particular place. Where's the leadership coming from Frome Town Council? We've done nothing in 5-6+ years to help walking and cycling, or very little, apart from the easy stuff like running cycle awareness classes or running a walking festival. We haven't done anything that's particularly challenging in that sense. And I really think that using consultations in this way is meaningless. How many walkers and cyclists have we consulted? We haven't consulted any. They've been speaking very loud and clear. They want better conditions for walking and cycling. We know that if you want to cycle from the station or from Vicarage Street into town, it's impossible. You'd have to go legally. You have to go all the way up Christchurch Street East, up to the corner house, down Bath Street, which is dangerous for cyclists, and it's a long way around. So what happens is cyclists go the wrong way along a one-way street in King Street and Church Street. It presents a danger to cyclists, and added to that we have COVID and the need for social distancing. The footpaths in King Street are extremely narrow. It's impossible to social distance. I went past there on Saturday. The road is full of people walking in the road. There may not actually be many accidents, but that's just luck. It's not safe, and it is not a pleasant place to be as a pedestrian. Accepted that some people, there is going to be some vehicle movement for vehicle deliveries, etc., for business deliveries, for residents. But of course, the only people that we've consulted are those people. They're not going to be affected either way from this because they still have access. The people that are affected are the people that use it as a rat run to avoid having the congestion at the corner house, and the people that use it as a route into the car park behind Marks and Spencer's. So I, for one, I object to this proposal, and I'm not going to vote for it. So, and I hope that my fellow colleagues will back me in that.
Sorry, Paul. Sorry to cut across you. I appreciate how passionate you feel on this subject and how eloquent you've spoken. But we need to move on. So I've got Ali, then Scott, and then Anne, please, and then Rob.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really hard one because we were all asked about the questions before we actually did this consultation. But I think it brings a much, much broader question about what do we as a council mean by consultation? How do we consult? How much do we work on the fact that we were elected? We were elected for a strategy. And I can foresee that we're going to keep getting blocked because we've got no agreement about what we mean. And I think it's really fundamental that we get together and have this discussion really quickly, because this is not the first time this has come up as an issue in this council. And it just stops us moving forward. Other than, I would agree with a lot of what Paul said, but I think this is a really tricky one because we were asked about this before. But it is, I would really, I think we should do this as a matter of urgency, actually have that conversation.
Thanks, Ali. I've got Scott, then Anne, then Rob, please.
Yeah, I do have some sentiments that sort of cross with Paul and Ali's there, in that I do want to see good change, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to do it against the will of the people of the town. And the data that we have, however, is not a true representation. Someone who works in data and analytics as a day job, the data set that we have is inconclusive. So how can we make a choice either way? It's also skewed in that it's.
Oh, no, we lost him.
Scott, are you there? Right, okay.
Hello?
Hello, Scott, are you back?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't realise I'd gone. I was just chatting away happily.
Yeah, you froze, unfortunately.
Where did I get to?
You got to the bit where you said the data set is incomplete, I think.
Yeah, it's not a complete set of data. We're aiming just there at people who work and reside there, when really this change is going to be something that affects everyone who uses that part of the town. So I would like to see a proposal put forward that says that we take this back to a wider consultation so that we have more data, so that if we are going to make something that is a big change like this, that A, we're doing it for the right reasons, which we already know we are, and B, that we have the support of residents. And I think the data we have so far doesn't support it either way, because it's just such a small data set.
Thanks, Scott. So Anne, then Rob, please.
I'm going to echo quite a lot of what Scott's just said. And I'm hoping that if we get funding for our local cycling, walking and infrastructure plan, our LC WIP, then that is going to be able to look at things holistically, because I think part of the problem is that if we close individual roads without looking at the impact we have on other roads and streets in the town, we stand a chance of just shifting the problem from one place to another. So I think I am hopeful that wider consultation and our LC WIP might solve a lot of these problems. And I agree, it is inconclusive. It's only 15 people and 10 people one way or the other, and that's the problem. I can see why we've only got such a small data set. It's because we were trying to do things quickly to coincide with coming out of lockdown, and it's just not possible to consult widely in such a short space of time.
Thanks, Anne. Yeah, I would echo that. Before I come to Rob, sorry, I'm just going to chime in. I mean, I didn't vote as a business owner in King Street. I purposely didn't vote on the outcome of this, because as a business owner in King Street, I'm pretty ambivalent, actually, which way it was going to go. My biggest concern would be that I feel that we should be looking at a town-wide travel and infrastructure assessment, because for the reasons that Anne's just laid out, until we know whether we're shifting problems from one area to another, we can't make these types of decisions. And I know we tried to push it through quickly because we wanted to take advantage of the COVID situation in terms of the positivity that we could get around highways. But if we're going to do it, I think we need to be radical and do it properly. Anyway, I'll shut up, and Rob, please.
I don't suppose it'd be any surprise that I completely endorse everything that Paul has said, and I thoroughly very much in agreement with his sentiments. I'd just like to point out from my perspective that a consultation is precisely that. It's not a vote. And we're consulting people, and we can never get to a point where we, have consulted, I don't know, something like, we've got a town of 27,000 people, for goodness sake, you know, how many people are going to try and consult? And, you know, we're never going to get a large percentage of people in participating in a consultation. So I think inevitably we're going to have to come back to making a decision for ourselves. And we're the ones who will have to take responsibility for that. I would like to put forward a counter proposal to the recommendation made in this report, is that we do reinstate the temporary closure at King Street to through traffic, allowing for exit.
So Andy, what we have there, I know other people got their hand, but what we have there is as Rob said, a counter proposal. So what we would need to do is then see whether there's anyone to second that, and then vote on whether that should be considered.
Okay, what was, sorry, apologies, I was trying to make as many notes.
Sorry, have we finished with comments? Don't we do all comments and then do we gather up the proposals at the end, because other people might have proposals as well?
We have to take the proposals as they come. So we need to take the first one, and if there's a second one or a third one.
Okay, that's fine.
Right, so can I just check what the actual proposal was in terms of the wording, please, Rob?
It's really very simple, just to take away the not at the very beginning of the existing proposal. So it would my proposal is to reinstate the temporary closure of King Street to through traffic, allowing for access immediately.
So Andy, what you would need then is someone to second that.
Okay, so if Rob's proposing, can I have somebody to second that, please? Paul?
And then we would vote on that.
So all those councillors in favour?
Can I just ask Paul, though, is that, can we have
sorry, hang on, guys.
I mean, can I
follow the procedure?
Right, okay, can we stop a second, please? Because Paul, can I just check? So I've got councillors who clearly feel very strongly and want to raise questions and comments. Are we right to be taking this vote without people actually being heard on this?
The standing orders say that we should take amendments to recommendations in turn. And what Rob did there was make a proposed recommendation to amend the recommendation. So my view is that you should take that vote and then carry on with the discussion depending on how it goes.
The question that I would raise to you, though, is this isn't an amendment of the recommendation. This is a reversal of the recommendation. It's a complete reversal.
I'll just give you my advice. You chair the meeting, Andy. In my view, is the recommendation has been proposed to be amended by removing the word not.
Right, okay. I think at this point I'm going to pause proceedings for 5 minutes because I'd like to have a conversation with Paul about this offline. So can we just break for 5 minutes, please, guys? Okay, I'm happy to come back if everybody's happy to come back as well. Still waiting on a few.
Andy, I've just been picking up on the chat, and lots of people said that they also made proposals. So I have to apologise because I missed those. If that was the case,
I've noticed one.
Yeah. But I didn't hear it, so I apologise to everyone if I misheard that.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Okay, so I've discussed this with Paul. I think the outcome of that conversation is fairly clear, that standing orders are standing orders. However, I think we're in a really tricky position because we've gone out to consultation, and regardless of what the consultation was and what the outcome was, we've actually gone out to that consultation. We've then tried to have a debate over it, and I appreciate Rob's put forward an amendment. So I think the first question would be to Rob. Would you mind if we allowed councillors to discuss this a little bit further before we actually take your amendment forward to vote on? Rob, are you there?
Why don't we assume that he's agreeing, just to move on?
Fine. So in that case, I will take comments from John, then Ali, then Andy Wentmore, and then Mark.
Okay, can I go ahead then?
Yes, please, John.
Okay, so I think the key thing is about the evidence basis for this. The thing is I don't see any evidence that closing it is going to make it easier for cyclists, and it's not an equal compromise that you close the road off and it'll make it safer. Of course it will, but where's the problem? I cycle all around town. That's how I go to town. I cycle. So I don't see the issue here. I think we need more evidence. So I would fully support that. But actually, I would make a counter proposal. What I would think, saying what Paul has been raising about the direction, why don't we propose something else like measures to slow traffic down on that road? We say we want to have 20 miles per hour through town. We're not enforcing it. But maybe on King Street, we could enforce it by actually making people slow down. That would make it safer for cyclists and pedestrians. But also at the same time, I really do hear what Paul's saying about everyone coming down illegally. So my counter proposal is slowing measures and a cycle lane that comes down the opposite way. We make it a one-way road with a cycle lane coming the opposite way. And that would solve the problem of access, because all cyclists coming from the station all come down that road illegally, unless they're really super fit and really want to go to the top and then zoom down to the bottom. It's just what happens. So my counter proposal against, and this is my proposal that I'd like us to vote on, if we're going to do it that way, would be that.
Right, thanks, John. Ali, then Andy, then Mark, please.
I would support Rob's proposal, but I also think that we need to have a really good communications wrap around this, that the reason that we're doing it is because we're supporting our strategy and we're giving other members of public some time to actually either have a dedicated email or some live consultation, so that we are enabling people to say what they think as it's actually happening. But I do think, so we need to be really clear as to why we're closing it, which is to give other people a chance to really see what this is like, and maybe to put a time frame on it before we make a decision. So that might be 6 months, but I think if we do it like that, then I think we're both showing leadership and we're giving public a chance to comment on what is actually happening rather than worrying about what might happen. And also we get a better opportunity to see what else happens in town.
Thanks, Ali. Andy, and then Mark, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a strange position to be in, isn't it? Because we're put here to act out the will of the people, which on paper, I know Scott has said that the data is inconclusive, and I'm not going to argue with Scott, as he is, I guess, the expert in the room. On paper, they've said what they've made a decision, but then on the other hand, we're also there because people have voted for us because they are putting trust in our vision and our ability to make decisions on their behalf. And then that's where the conversation with, are we doing too much consultation? Are we being radical enough? Are we showing leadership and vision? So I really don't know what to think, regardless of whether I think it's a good idea or not. This particular debate has brought up some conversations that I think, yeah, like Ali said, that we need to have. I'm feeling a bit lost in this. I'm not sure what's going on anymore.
Brilliant. All right, thanks, Andy. That's great. So I've got Mark, then Paul, then Scott, please.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. This throws up a lot of questions. I agree with Ali's point that when is consultation taking a public vote on something? That's something we've come across in the grants committee this season, something we come across in public votes all the time. Do we do what they want, or do we do what we think they want? I think there are too many exemptions included in the proposal. Delivery trucks, disabled people, people who live there. So if, as Paul proposes, cyclists are allowed to come down Vicarage Street into King Street, that's an accident waiting to happen. They're going to come around the corner and either meet pedestrians in the road or a delivery truck outside the pub. The road isn't narrow enough to have a contra-flow cycle lane as well as a pavement and a roadway. It's a very, very narrow road, and I'm in it most days. Who's going to enforce this? We're not going to pay for wardens or marshals or anything like that. It's all going to be done on goodwill, which eventually we'll get there. And whether we like it or not, the majority of road users in the town are still motorists. I echo Anne's point that we need, and we've discussed this several times, and we'll discuss it again with the buts in a minute. We need a holistic view of the town, not just keep moving stuff around the place. When roads get closed off, when the town centre was closed off, when Rodden Road is closed off, you can see other roads getting into gridlock. By making roads closed doesn't make the traffic go away, it goes somewhere. And until we know where it's going to go in a proper holistic approach, then this piecemeal approach isn't going to be beneficial to the majority of the town, or traffic, or pollution. So those are my views, for what it's worth.
Thanks, Mark. Paul, then Scott, please.
Thanks, Andy. I wanted to respond to a couple of earlier points. One about consultation. It seems to me that an awful lot of consultation has been done in the town regards walking and cycling. We've had endless feedback, people wanting better conditions for walking and cycling from all over the town, from numerous consultation exercises and engagement exercises. So in a sense, we have done that already. When it comes to this specific consultation on King Street, 100 people have been consulted, 15 out of 100 have been against it, 10 have expressed a positive view, but there are 75 people who are obviously ambivalent about it. So in a sense, to me, that neutral stance suggests that they're not really bothered whether it's access only or not, really. So I don't think that we in a sense, that's more in favour of us going through with our strategy as it is. The other point I just wanted to make quickly, in response to John's suggestion, I think it was a reasonable suggestion. However, John, we have already engaged a traffic consultant to look at this issue, and the traffic consultant has said that in order to create a cycle-friendly space or cycle lane in Church Street, King Street, an access-only arrangement is a prerequisite to that. Otherwise, it would be a reasonable suggestion. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. Scott, and then John, please.
So obviously my point earlier was about the fact that obviously what we have here is 25 people's views on a decision, and the suggestion that we, as the however many councillors there are here of the full 18, that's an even, in my mind, it's very simple. That's less of a number than 25, so that's an even smaller data set. And I think while yes, people have had this consultation, any other proposal that comes to town council, people read about it and then they can come and they can ask questions. And if people come and ask questions and then we make up our minds, then we've made up our minds. Everything is proportional as well. So yes, we've been given a remit based on X, Y, Z of the people who voted for us. But as councillors for this town, we also have a responsibility to listen and take on board the opinions of the people who didn't vote for us and the people who didn't vote at all. That's 26,000 people. And what we're actually saying is we're just going to listen to the opinion of 25 people. I think it's a very dangerous route to go down. And while I'm all for big changes and things like this, and I'm not against closing King Street to traffic. I just feel like it has to be done the right way. And I feel like we need a little bit more time. And yes, a holistic approach is the ideal thing. And there is one coming from Somerset at some point down the line. But as you'll see with the Butts proposal that's coming a bit later this evening, we still need to chip away and get small wins where we can. But at the same time, we have to do it properly. And to do that properly, we can't put a consultation out to 100 people, get 25 responses and make a decision for the whole town based on the opinion of 15 of those 25 people. So when we come back to my own proposal, it would be that we, postpone this decision till our next meeting so that, as possibly Ali said, a bit more live consultation with people and not just the residents and businesses on King Street. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Scott. So I'm going to take John, but then after that, we're going to need to push on.
Just quickly, 25% return on a consultation is not bad, actually. So if we did that across the town, then I take the point about what Scott just made. Our strategy is very much pro cycling, pro walking. It's never said we're going to close roads around town. And that's because people don't want roads closed around town. The last thing on the terms of a traffic consultant, would this be the traffic consultant that proposed closing roads around me? Big traffic scheme where we're also having another traffic scheme imposed by Somerset after many years of consultation. The same one who wanted to impose these things without consultation. A scheme which was directly implanted from London where people are in uproar.
No, it's not the same,
being set off. So I'm just saying, so that's my comment and I'll shut up.
Just to answer that, John, I think it was a different consultant this time. Just to clarify, I think it was Patrick. Right, very quickly, I see Anita and I think Mark. I'll take two more and then we need to try and pick the bones out of the amendments and the votes, please. So Anita and then Mark.
Thanks, Andy. I just think it's worth remembering that we've actually put the townspeople through an awful lot of change. to do with the roads over the last few months. We've had the marketplace closed completely. We've had all the scaffolding up Bath Street, and we've had the closure of Rodden Road Bridge. And I think people are pretty cheesed off about, oh, well, one's open, but then something else is closed. It's constantly changing with roads being closed to them. And I know we talked a long time ago about actually going out for a fairly wide consultation around the town, talking to people about whether they wanted to support this motion or not. And we were just going to do this as a temporary measure to make life a little bit easier for people who go shopping so that they feel safer after lockdown. But I would be much more in favour of putting it out to the wider town. But in time, I think people need to have a breath from all the changes and the road closures in the town. I think people are sick and fed up to the back teeth with it, frankly. And I think they just want a little moment to settle. Let's get Christmas over and done with. Let's get past the new year. And then let's put it out to a much wider consultation. That would seem to be the fairest way to go about it. Thanks.
Thanks, Anita. Mark, please.
Totally echo what Anita says. We consulted with residents and businesses in King Street. Did we ever stop and ask any of the motorists who are passing through why they're using the street and what they would do if it were closed and what their attitude to what a slightly longer journey would be? I think if I'm reading Scott's runes right, then if he wants to delay it for a bit more consultation, then I think people who actually use the street, not just cyclists and pedestrians, but actually motorists. Why are you there? Why are you using it? Where would you go if it didn't exist? So I think that's correct. You know, I am nervous about cyclists going the wrong. You all know what I did as a job, and I picked too many people up off the road. And I don't know. I am a bit concerned about why people would come herring down King Street, because not all cyclists potter along, and not all drivers potter along, and they often meet each other, and the cyclists will always come off worse. That's my concern about it. So I think more consultation, whichever way you're going to look at that, however you define it, is going to be very, very helpful.
Thanks, Mark. Right, okay, so I think we're going to go to some sort of vote on this. Paul, unless I've got this wrong, and I've tried to keep track on this. So apparently we had a proposal from Scott first to amend, followed then by an amendment proposal from Rob, then finally from John. So if that's correct, then I believe we need to vote on the proposal from Scott if he has a second on that amendment. Would that be correct?
I think that's right. I think I missed Scott's proposal, so I'm not sure what he was.
My proposal is currently that we postpone a decision on whether to close King Street or not, while further consultation involving not just the businesses and residents, but the motorists and pedestrians and wider users of the town.
So,
okay, so Scott, if you're proposing that, and we are duty bound under standing orders to vote on that, can I have a second? So that's John. So just to clarify, colleagues, what that means is we are first voting on whether or not to take Scott's amendment to a full vote. So we have to vote on bringing it forward first. So we've got the proposer and the seconder. Can I see a show of hands for councillors in favour, please?
I'm sorry, Andy, can you say that again?
Yeah, so Ali, with any amendment, we need it to be proposed and seconded, and then we as a group need to vote on whether or not we want to take it forward to a full vote. So it's a two-stage process effectively. So this one is, are we happy to accept this as an amendment? And if we are, then we vote on it afterwards. So
can I just ask what happened to my counter proposal, or is that has that been superseded by this one?
No, Rob, I'm taking them in order because apparently Scott proposed prior to yours. So we've had a proposer, we've had a seconder. So all councillors in favour of Scott's amendment, please, or of taking Scott's amendment forward.
So that is a majority.
And I will, for the record, those against.
So there was 2 against.
And any abstentions?
I think Ali was probably abstention.
Fine. So that amendment as being accepted as being able to be carried forward to vote, we now need to vote on it. So Scott, I will assume that you're going to propose that amendment again.
Sorry, sorry, Andy, can I just ask one more thing? So if we then vote on Rob's proposal, we could vote that to go forward. Can we, or is that this?
We won't be. If this is now carried, it will not. We will not be going to Rob's proposal.
Okay.
Because we're taking them in the order that they were proposed.
Then I wanted to not abstain. I wanted to vote against.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it's fine because we're now going to vote on it, Ali. So you'll be able to vote against it. So, assuming that Scott, you're going to propose that again, can I have somebody to second it as the vote? Anne, and then all councillors in favour of Scott's amendment, please.
So I've got. Can you just hold your hands up again? I've got 6, I think. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, 6, 7. So 7 in favour of Scott's amendment, and that's a majority.
And for the records, I'm sure they'll want to. Those against, please.
So there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against.
And that will mean no abstentions. So thank you, and thank you for your patience, colleagues, on that. I appreciate we've really had to go and try and work around that as best we possibly can. I think at this point, I'm going to call for, as we're at 90 minutes, call for a 10-minute recess and break before we move on to the next agenda item. So we will say 25 to 9, please. Okay, I'll make that 25 to 9, colleagues. So hopefully people will start coming back. Still waiting for a couple more. Okay, so I'm going to press on with the agenda now then, please. So we will take item number 5, which is a proposal to install single yellow lines along the butts. And I believe this is in the hands of Councillor Scott Ward.
It is indeed. Good evening, everyone. Again. Since the elections where we were all voted in, the number one thing that I have been contacted about with emails or people talk to me about in the street, and it may be the same for you, is traffic situations around the town, whether that's speeding, whether it's dangerous driving, curb mounting, inconsiderate parking. It is definitely one of the major issues that people have on a day-to-day basis, and one area that sort of popped up the most from the very beginning, almost the first week after the election, was the butts. In fact, the husband of a friend of mine who walks his son along the butts made a comment to the local paper, wrote a letter in, and that was highlighted to me, and that was from that day onwards I had this sort of love affair with the traffic situation and the butts. So since that happened, there has been the creation of a Frome traffic safety group on Facebook. There's also been the creation of a community-led neighbourhood group of residents on the butts, and Councillor John Clark has also been hugely helpful and influential in pushing forward, looking at the issues that people are facing and how can we solve them. We are fully aware that there is a full traffic review, traffic and parking review pending with Somerset, but we felt that if there was a possibility to just try and get some small changes made that would help people on a day-to-day basis, then we should, it would be remiss of us to not try and take that opportunity. One solution that was put forward and was the popular solution, and while there has been many suggestions from speed bumps to 20-mile-an-hour zone to other traffic calming measures, one that is a quick win and hopefully a quick fix would be the implementation of a single yellow line down one side of the butts. Have we got the slideshow there with the map? Is that in the slideshow? There we go. So as you can see here, this red line represents the proposed single yellow line. And the reason of bringing it to full council is that myself, John Clark, and a representative of the neighbourhood group on the butts, Nicola Malcolm Jones, we had a conversation with someone from Somerset Highways, and they are happy to implement this single yellow line before the full traffic and parking review, but would like the support of Frome Town Council and councillors in doing so. So the proposal being put forward is this single yellow line. In fact, there's some images here. Sorry, could we go back to the images? Sorry, I got ahead of myself there. So you can see some of the issues being faced here. So with the lorries that come into the town up the ski slope and past Sainsbury's there, they do have permission and they are allowed to come into the town further if they're making deliveries, but sometimes we do see lorries going in the opposite direction along the butts. So, for example, in one of the images on one of the next slide or two, there's this. Okay, possibly the next one after this. No. Yes, actually, yeah, that one there. You can see the Sainsbury's lorry there. If it's making a delivery to Sainsbury's, it should have come up the ski slope and gone straight into Sainsbury's. But it's come through the town the wrong way and is going down the butts, followed by another, HGV. And what that means is cars are then mounting and lorries are mounting the pavement where people are walking. Quite a lot of these people being school children at the beginning and the end of the school day, as they head up towards Oakfield and the schools up in that area there. So that was put forward, the curb mounting was put forward as one of the key priorities and one of the key issues that people would like to see ended. Speeding is another issue. It's worth me pointing out at this point, it's a comment that I made to Somerset Highways, in that I don't see this yellow line being the whole solution. And if it isn't the whole solution, if it doesn't solve all the problems, then we would still come back. And so, for example, if speeding was increased because the flow of the traffic was allowed to happen naturally without the parked cars in that section, there are going to be people who speed. So maybe if that is a big issue, then we would gather the evidence in the same way we've done with the curb mounting issue, and we would go back to Somerset Highways and maybe look at a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit or speed bumps or other traffic calming measures. So that's one key thing to put forward, that this isn't, for me anyway, and for John and for the residents of the butts, this isn't a one and done situation. This is just something that we can get and get within sort of next year or so, ideally. So if we can go to the next slide, please. There you go. You can see a knocked over stone gatepost is, if that's happening, then there's obviously an issue. So we also did some consultation with the residents of the butts, and we did on the day before second lockdown began, so on the Wednesday before, we actually went out and did some door knocking and spoke to the residents directly affected by the double yellow line. We wanted to ascertain, do they have parking in the rear on the Rochester's Hill side of Rochester's Road side of their houses? Do they use that parking? And so in total, 149 leaflets were distributed, of which 48 households responded. 34 of them were in favour, 6 were not in favour, 8 were undecided. So overall, there was a 32% response rate of all residents of the butts. As I say, we did some door knocking and spoke to residents living between the numbers 43 to 97 who would be directly affected. Of those houses, 13 were in favour, 2 were not in favour, 8 were undecided, and 5 didn't respond. So Somerset, like I say, Somerset Highways has indicated they'll move ahead with the proposal if it's supported by FTC. So the recommendations, and hopefully that you'll support the implementation of the single yellow line in the designated area, support the ongoing campaign for monitoring traffic issues and further improvements along the butts in the future should the single yellow line not resolve all the issues. And then when Somerset Highways are planning and taking out their wider review of traffic and parking in the future, we hope to continue as a town council to engage with residents, help them establish their own community-led campaigns, like Nicola and the residents of the butts have done here, with the aim of creating safer streets for all. So it ties in with this overall sort of aim that we have for safer streets, for pedestrians, for cyclists, for motorists, and so the recommendation is to support ongoing engagement with residents. That's it really. Any questions?
That's great. Laura, could we, brilliant, thank you very much. So, okay, I'm going to take these in screen order. I've got Rob, then I've got John, then I've got Mark, then I've got Paul, please.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I'm very impressed with what you've done to arrive at this, and I'm fully in support of it. However, my question is, why do you think that this is a more significant data set than the previous consultation? Doesn't your comments about, consulting widely pertain to this suggestion or proposal in the same way that you're suggesting the previous King Street?
That's a very valid point. And if it was just a case of this was the consultation and then it was happening, I would be completely in agreement with you that this wasn't a wide enough data set. However, the consultation that we've done here was informal. It wasn't a proper full consultation. This was just myself, John Clark and Nicola handing out leaflets, knocking on doors for your information as councillors. If you then support the idea of it happening, it would then go to a full consultation put out by Somerset and Somerset Highways to the full, it'd be a full consultation, and then we would go based on that information.
Thank you.
Okay, I've then got John, then Mark, then Paul, please.
So as am I on? Yeah. Okay. As a local resident, I fully support this. I see the total logic of it, and my questions were all answered in your presentation. So congratulations on that. The only issue is that crossing at the bottom of Somerset Road, which is very busy there, just there. And actually it's helped and aided by the fact that the traffic's so impeded, kids can cross with their family. I wonder if we could amend, this is a proposition, to amend your proposal only to highlight or to stick it in the late. I would be happy also just to stick it, make sure we stick it in that later consultation to make sure that there's a proper crossing there for those kids. There's no crossing. It's a completely informal place that's constantly being used. So somehow we could use this approval, which I totally agree with your proposal, to make sure there's safe crossing there, just there, because it is the main traffic crossing point of that road to the schools.
Yeah, and I can answer your question and a question from Sue Palmer in the question and answer section at the same time. This particular item, that single yellow line, like I said, isn't the one and done. I'm going to keep chipping away. It's going to be looking at, a crossing there for people coming up the road and going up past Victoria Park. I think HGVs were mentioned. One thing we're currently looking at is the signage. So at the moment, the only signs for HGV drivers it's at the top of the ski slope there. There's nothing further on to just remind them and just say, actually, do you really need to come down this road? Because my thinking and my feeling is that a lot of them don't. Can we see if is that an okay answer for Sue Palmer there?
Sorry, I've muted myself. I've got so thanks Scott, thanks Joe. I've got Mark, then I've got Paul, please, and then I've also got some questions from the public and other attendees.
Scott, thank you for doing this work. I know you've been on it since you were elected, and it's a very valuable piece of work, and I appreciate the depth you've gone into it. I walked it yesterday with my dog just to. I mean, I use it every day like everybody else does, but I walked along it just to put myself in that position. And I had to jump into somebody's garden when a lorry came going towards Sainsbury's, which was an Arctic lorry with two other Arctic tractors on top of the lorry itself. So no way could that be delivering to the town or anything like that. As you say, the instructions to lorry drivers are very vague about who and when they can use that road, and that does need enforcement and checking up on. I agree that this is a good compromise. I've seen people who've said the whole thing should be double yellow lines the whole way through. Well, we can imagine how fast people will be driving through there, then make it even more dangerous for people who live on the butts, stepping out from their front road into a very fast road. And I think this is I imagine that the original thinking on allowing to park on one side was if there's such a thing as a natural. It's a natural speed barrier because everything has to slow down to negotiate it. So there will be a slight increase in traffic flow, we hope, but hopefully on the road and not on the pavement. Again, I'm glad you're getting on with this. I think this is a really good idea, and it sounds like you've got support from county and from the council themselves. But it does need to be integrated into the whole holistic thing that's going on around there. John has pointed out the safer streets around his house, the residents parking that's going to come in. Who knows what the knock-on effect of that is? And I would also support some sort of crossing outside the old Weaver into Water Lane, because that is a cut through from people from the Mount going to the schools. and it is a dangerous place to be. People hair over the top of the brow of the butts and come down there. So if we can feed that into the consultations with county, that would be much appreciated. But otherwise, very well done, and thank you for doing it.
Can't hear you, Andy.
All right, I keep muting myself. I've got Paul, and then I've got Peter, and then I'll go out to the public and other attendees.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I'm glad that Scott has recognised and articulated that this isn't necessarily a whole solution. It's a sticking plaster at best. I think I support it because people driving on pavements is bad for pedestrians, obviously. So we want to avoid people driving on pavements. However, what will happen, unfortunately, is what happens every time things have been done like this over many, many years, is that making driving easier will bring more cars. So they'll have more cars in the butts. They actually probably won't get a solution at all. I know many people who avoid the butts because it's a nightmare to drive through. If you make it easier to drive through, you'll just get more people driving through it, and it won't actually necessarily improve. So, as I said many times, you know, all these problems come about are driven by, driven is a good word, by our addiction to the motor vehicle. And until we start to change that culture, we're always going to have problems like this. They're only going to get worse. So we really need to be bold. We need to start changing this culture.
Yeah, I totally agree with the sentiments regarding a holistic approach. In fact, when the Safer Streets proposal was put forward, the three aspects that I sort of had questions about were the timing of it, going back to, children going back to school after lockdown, the town's fatigue, like Anita mentioned, with roadworks and things like that. The town was still closed at that point. And then my third and the big one is, what's the effect on those roads? And in my mind, something has to be done about the butts before the Safer Streets scheme could go forward. And while the primary aim of this single yellow line is to make it safer for pedestrians specifically and cyclists, is unfortunately, there is that secondary, like you say, that secondary benefit that the traffic will flow more freely. All I can, do, and I will keep doing, is encourage people to remember that we have a bypass. If you need to get to the other side of town, use the bypass. You don't need to go through town. And then, obviously, just reaffirming my commitment.
I think Scott's gone
Is
off.
that Scott?
Off on, yeah, I think he's frozen again, Andy.
Okay. So Peter, what I'll do is I'll go to yourself, and obviously if Scott's finished. So Peter, yes, if we can take yourself, please.
Just a couple of points of information, really, just clarifying what consultation the county will do if councillors agree to this proposal tonight. There'll be a 21-day period of consultation. We think that will probably start in the new year now, realistically. But that consultation will entail a press advertisement. It will also entail notices on the street and a letter drop to residents in the Butts area. And obviously the County Council will take those comments from that consultation into account before they finally confirm the arrangement. The other point of information I wanted to draw attention to, because there has been some discussion about the need for a crossing. You may recall that the school street concept does include a crossing to serve those crossing the Butts into Somerset Road. Now, of course, we are still waiting to hear the outcome of the bid to the Department for Transport in relation to that. But I just wanted to highlight that that was something that was part of the concept that was presented before.
Brilliant. Thanks, Peter. Rachel, I think we had a couple of questions from Sue Palmer. Have those been answered?
Yes, Scott's answered those questions already. I think we
Fantastic. I think we then have we've got a chat, or it's in the chat box, but Gavin Hill asked a question or wanted to make a comment. Does he want to come forward?
Gavin, if you'd like to talk, you are free to.
Hello, Gavin. Did you want to raise your comment that you put in the chat box?
It was more just an observation, agreeing that a crossing is definitely needed at the junction with Somerset Road.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And then Rachel, I think we've got Richard who wanted to ask a question, and then I think we've got Martin and John who also did.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, Richard, please carry on.
Yeah, your points on this being a partial solution are well made, and I suspect that the effect of drawing the line and drawing the yellow line will effectively be like putting a stent on the road, and traffic will flow much faster and quicker. And I suspect local knowledge by HGV drivers will mean that we'll get more trucks down there than less. So whilst the traffic might be within the curb lines, I suspect we'll have other issues to deal with. I just wondered how effectively the signage is going to be put in place to help control that, and how quickly reactions to that problem, the problems that come with the changes, can be dealt with. And is there a further consultation process that will need to be put in place to put other measures to control traffic? It's just understanding what the next steps are once we see the effects of the single yellow line.
Thank you, Richard. That's excellent. Scott, do you want to come back on that, please?
Yeah, no, it's a very good point, and as I say, it's a case of just making sure that we continue to monitor the situation. It's one of those things when people know they're being watched and that other people are watching their behaviour. Quite a lot of the time that acts as an incentive for those people to act sensibly. I'll be engaging with the neighbourhood speed watch team once the yellow line is in place, so that we can hopefully get some speed readings both before and after the implementation of the yellow line. We need to see, is there a speed issue already? Will it cause a speed issue? There are two camps of thinking as well. One is that people are just speeding through there anyway. Another camp is that people are speeding on one side of the road to get from gap to gap in the parked cars. So again, it's an ongoing and fluid investigation into the flow of the traffic in that part of the town. And like I say, my own commitment is that I will keep chipping away at it and keep working with the residents to make sure that if other problems do arise, that we try and tackle them as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Richard, for your question. So, Rachel, could you bring in Martin and John Clark, please? Because I think they both wanted to comment or contribute.
Okay, I'll go first. Thank you very much, Andy, for this. I think it's a really good proposal, and thanks to John Clark for doing some work on it as well. I do think it's typical, knowing John, that he's forgotten that the bus is only half his to deal with. It's split down the middle, and I notice he's come up with this proposal to put the yellow line on my side. But actually, no, thanks, John. But I think it's a good idea, and it should go ahead. I'd like to ask Scott though. What reassurances have you? Where are you with county? I was not quite sure of that.
We spoke to a chap called Jeff from Somerset Highways. I can't remember his surname, and I keep wanting to calling him Jeff Buckley, but I know that that's not his name.
Not him. Jeff
And that's the one. And he basically has said that if we can get support of FTC and the councillors, that they would look to go ahead with it. We've also spoken with, I can't remember her name. I'm just going to have a look now. John might know. Who's the lady you've been speaking to about this?
Sarah, her first name. I can't think of the second name, but she's the Mendip Highways officer.
Sarah Davis. Yeah, that's the one.
Sarah Davis. Yeah.
Yeah, and they are all for this. Obviously, pending a full consultation.
Okay, I mean that's good news. Is John will confirm getting traffic signs or any kind of traffic movements changed is like getting blood out of a stone. So you're from County Highways, so you've done a good job to get this far. And I think if I can help by putting as much pressure on them to go through with this, as I certainly will.
Brilliant.
Thanks,
Martin. Thanks, Scott, for coming back on that. John, please.
Yeah, Scott's presented the case extremely well, and I just want to reiterate, like what Scott has said, is that this is just a starting point, and we need to look at a much wider review and implementation of traffic and highways and walking and cycling. You know, this is just a start, and yes, I think one person referred to it as a sticking plaster. To some extent, it is, but we felt, in talking to the residents, it was something that would meet their approval, and I think it will do. Just a couple of points. The HGV issue, I think someone's mentioned about a lorry watch, and that's something we have considered. One of the things they've agreed to do is to move some of the HGV signs, limit signs. So they've agreed to move those. So whereas currently it's on the edge of town, it's going to be moved to the Sainsbury's roundabout. So hopefully be much more visible to stop people driving down there. And if they want to either use a bypass, they have to go back, or they go round into Marsden Estate, where there is lorries who park up there, quarry lorries. So that is something that's going to be part of this package, moving those signs. And also they're very keen to look at signage generally. Speeding issue, yes, I think there's various points about that, but fundamentally what Jeff was telling us was that their experiences, it doesn't necessarily add to speeding, but they are open to having speeding measuring before and after. So if that goes ahead, as well as the speed watch people, that would be great. I think that the important thing here is that we keep an eye on it and review it and monitor it. And as I say, it's a starting point. The last point, just briefly, is the crossing opposite the old Weavers. That has been discussed with the traffic engineer, and she was firmly saying that we cannot have a zebra crossing, but it may be possible, I think, to pursue that more in terms of not making it a formal crossing, but a studied crossing. Because what she's saying about that is because of the incline there coming down from the butts, then the speed of traffic and then having a zebra crossing doesn't work. So I don't think it's something we need to leave. I think we need to pursue that with her. But certainly when I spoke to her about it, she was saying very clearly that that wasn't something that could happen at that point. I think we need to review that with them. So, and thanks to Scott for all the work he's done. It's really brilliant. And thank you for the residents as well, particularly Nicola, who's worked really hard on this.
Thanks, John.
And just shows the importance of when you engage. Hey, oh, you want to stop me now, do you?
Oh, sorry, John. You broke up, so I didn't.
No, I'm just going to say, when you engage with residents effectively, it can make a difference.
Absolutely, completely agree and would echo that. So, thanks, John. Scott, before I come back to you, I think Andy, you had something you wanted to add.
Yeah, forgive me if it's slightly naive or I'm missing a thing here, but well, firstly, great work, Scott. I thought, surely if you're a HGV driver, it's no fun to drive down there anyway. So how are they ending up there? Is it poor signage and they're new to the roads and they just end up getting, going down that way? Would they use the bypass if they knew about it more? What is the deal with that? Because they seem like the biggest menace on that road, and I don't see how using that road for them has any benefit at all.
Thanks, Andy. Scott, and then Mark, please.
Yeah, just to answer Andy's point there, I would imagine that you've got HGV lorries coming up at the Sainsbury's end of town to the Marston Trading Estate, making deliveries there, and then needing to make deliveries elsewhere. And instead of going out and around the town via the bypass and then coming back in at the relevant point, a lot of them, especially the local drivers, will just think, I'll go through there. That's fine. I'm just going to that point. And, you know, no issues with lorries making legitimate deliveries, but as that, you know, the photo of the Sainsbury's lorry going, you know, towards Sainsbury's down the butts, there's no reason why that lorry should have been going down the butts that way at all. So it's a mixture of genuine use and cheeky use. And then just my own point was just to say that while I am presenting this, I do have to give John Clark full credit, as well as Nicola and the residents of the butts, because they've done all the legwork, they've done all the shouting. I just got to type it all up and look good.
Fantastic.
Sorry,
Thanks,
Scott. You underestimate, Scott, what you did. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, John. Right, I'm going to take Mark, and then I think we need to go to a vote if we can, guys, please. So, Mark.
Yeah, just a quick point. I think a lot of people are using the butts who've never been there before, probably following SatNav. Lorry drivers sometimes save on the HGV SatNav by buying a car one. So where you can get your car along the butts or under the bridge at Rodden Road, you can't always get your big Arctic under there. So that's why they get jammed in these odd places around the country. But I think some sort of publicity campaign on the businesses on the Manor Road estate might be helpful to remind their deliveries and their own drivers that there are alternative routes to using the butts. And unless they have some smaller trucks go down there to deliver into the town, that's fine. Or they have to do it. But everybody else should be using the bypass and the ski slope. And we probably need to do a publicity campaign amongst all the businesses in the trading estate. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mark. Right, guys, let's take this to a vote then. Oh, sorry, Rachel.
Just to make sure that you've seen that Martin's made a couple of comments. He said he thinks we need to take all the proposed improvements one at a time, as John says that the zebra crossing has already been turned down. And he also says that, yes, SatNav is one of the problems according to county highways.
Fantastic. Thanks for that input, Martin. That's appreciated. So, okay, let's take this to the vote then, please. So,
just to be on the record, I withdraw my proposal about the crossing based on what John just informed me, so it doesn't confuse the vote and our order.
Brilliant. Thank you, John. So, Scott, on that basis, I will assume that you're going to propose this. Excellent. Can I have a councillor to second that then, please? Anita. And then all councillor colleagues in favour, please.
That's unanimous.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And again, thanks, Scott, for all the work you've done on this. Thanks, John. Appreciate you've had a massive input into that. And for if you can convey our thanks to the residents who have worked hard on this as well, Nicola and the rest of the guys. Excellent. So we will now take item number 6 on the agenda, which is supporting the Slowways initiative in Frome. And I believe this is with Rich.
I think it's with me.
I do apologise, Emma. It's in the much more capable hands of
yeah,
Emma.
indeed. Yeah, you've heard enough of me over the years. Emma's much more eloquent.
I definitely wouldn't say that, but thank you. Yeah, I will try and keep this short, hopefully short and straightforward. So this is to support the Slowways. So I'll just briefly describe what the Slowways project is. So Slowways is a project to create a network of walking routes connecting all of Great Britain's towns and cities and thousands of villages. Each slowway uses existing footpaths to connect neighbouring settlements and it will provide a network of these routes that can be combined for longer journeys to be able to walk from settlement to settlement. And as far as possible, routes are direct, off-road, safe, accessible and easy to navigate. So what has happened so far is during the spring 2020 lockdown, the guy that set this up put a call out and got 700 volunteers together who completed a first draft of mapping the slowways network. The organisers are now working on building a website that will host all of the slowways routes. That should be launched at the end of January. And then at some point in the new year, they don't have an exact date yet, but at some point they're looking for 10,000 volunteers to walk, review, record and improve these slowways routes. So yeah, there's not too much more to say on this really, just to go on to the recommendations. So the recommendation is that Freetown Council formally support the slowways initiative, include the slowways within future planning policies and initiatives, consider where new paths might strengthen the slowways network, and encourage members of the public to sign up personally to walk and review a slowway via the Walkers Are Welcome group. Rich, is there any more to add on that? I have flown through that super quick.
No, that's brilliant. I just think it's really nice. It's a nice idea. It's national, and it's not. It wouldn't just be Walkers Are Welcome, of course. It'd be all the other walking groups that we've got across Frome and in the area. And it's just a nice way of highlighting walks and actually getting footpaths to be used again, and hopefully sticking a few new signs on and making it exciting. And thinking, oh, let's try and walk to Nunney without using the road, and that sort of thing, you know. So I think it's a really nice idea, and it might just mean a few old footpaths being unearthed and reopened possibly in the future, which would back the Ramblers Association's campaign at the moment. So yeah, I think it's a nice thing to do. Doesn't cost us anything. We've already got lots of walking groups in town who will take this on board. There'll be loads of volunteers, I'm sure. Thanks, Emma.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rich. Thank you, Emma, for that. It's fantastic. Have I got any questions or comments from any councillors for Emma or Rich, please?
I think Steve and Anne have their hands up. Andy?
I didn't know if they were still up from the previous vote. I do apologise.
Anne's one. Steve, you don't want to ask a question?
So sorry, I've completely lost it. So I take it I've got no questions or comments then. In that case, then we will vote on the recommendations, please. So can I have a councillor to propose that, please? Rich, one second. Scott, all those councillor colleagues in favour, please, if you could raise your hands.
Unanimous.
Thank you very much. Excellent. So we will now move on to the final item on the agenda, which is an update on Freetown Council's work to support local businesses. And I think I'm correct in saying this time that this is initially in the capable hands of Viv.
Yeah, Viv and George. So double capable hands. Actually, Laura, we've got a couple of slides if you're happy to share that. It's a quick update, don't worry, only a couple of slides. Just really kind of updating you from the last town meeting we went to, really focusing on what we've been doing the last 6 months, in particular supporting the business community during the pandemic. We've been putting out a lot of comms during the last 9 months now, and we found the business bulletin, which has about 900 subscribers, has been going out more frequently. It used to be bi-monthly, but just because of the pace of the information that was coming out for government and the need to keep the information fresh, we were actually doing this at points. It was almost fortnightly. And we found that businesses found this information. It was good because it was coming from us. It was talking about the government guidance, but it was also putting in some of the local initiatives we're doing as well. And we tried to keep this bulletin as balanced as possible with the local initiatives and the more national ones. As well as the bulletins, we also developed a new COVID business support area on Frome's Town Council's website, and that had some really useful tools such as the support funding tool that businesses could look at, and just a way of keeping a central place of information for people to go to and find all these changing policies and initiatives. Grant funding was one of the key areas that businesses were interested in knowing about and being updated on, and we worked really closely with the economic development team at Mendip, getting the information out about the grants, but also in particular talking to businesses who initially weren't eligible for some of the grants that came out with the initial criteria, feeding that back to Mendip and trying to adjust the criteria in particular with the local restriction support grants that have come out in the second lockdown. And Mendip have really appreciated our input into the ways they've been managing the FAQs around all the funding. We've also been helping individuals who are self-employed in the town, talking to them about the support schemes that are available, and also training and webinars that they can join. Next slide, Laura. So as well as the business support we've been doing, we have tried as much as possible to continue with the events. And one of the key things that businesses liked that we put on was the networking events in the town for businesses. These had to stop in person in March. However, we have continued to work with Frome Chamber of Commerce to offer an online option for this. So we've done quite a few Zoom webinars and training sessions, and actually the take up for these has been really good. And we're moving forward at doing a kind of blended approach to the training we offer. So hopefully continuing to do discuss and do in the evenings and working lunches, but also offering some online discussion groups and training, as certainly some people found these more accessible for them. Sadly, the Festival of Business, which was planned to happen in October this year, has been postponed. There was quite a lot of planning had already happened with that. So we are keen to keep that happening in next year, maybe looking at business resilience and how new ways of working. But certainly there's still momentum behind it. And I think we feel with the Chamber of Commerce a really strong need to put this back on place next year. Employment has been something that we've been continuing to look at, and in particular vocational training in and around Frome. We have worked a lot towards a Kickstart programme in Frome that was launched by the government in October. We've been working very closely with Adventure, and they have managed to secure over 40 placements or initial interest in 40 placements of businesses in Frome who are keen to take in somebody on the Kickstart programme, which is focused on 16 to 24-year-olds who are on universal credit. And we are actually delighted that we're going to bring in somebody into our Rangers team on this Kickstart programme. So hopefully being a bit of a leader there in the programme. Our vocational training group has continued to meet throughout the whole pandemic. We've been having monthly online meetings, and really for us, one of the best things out of this has been the collaboration between all the different training providers and organisations in Frome who are looking at improving skills, working with young people and working with people looking to retrain and get new work. And I'm pleased to say that the Spring Forward section has now gone live on our website, and this is promoting all the different services that the training providers can offer people in Frome who are looking to train up and skill up. I'm now going to hand over to George. She's still here because George has been working on a lot of our work with retailers and hospitality providers in Frome during the pandemic and helping them through this difficult time.
Thanks. Laura, can we have the next slide? I've got a really horrible echo on my computer, so I apologise if I start talking a bit slurry or slowly. Yeah, so I think if the shops, the retailers and the hospitality people didn't know who I was before lockdown, they certainly do now, because they've had quite a lot of emails from me over the last 6 to 9 months. So I think before lockdown, Discover Frome, probably from a local's point of view, was largely used probably to see what was on, looking at events and things. And as it says here, it really has been repurposed really over since the first lockdown. It was quite clear early on from sort of local Facebook groups that people wanted to know which shops were doing what, who was offering local deliveries. So we've switched the shopping pages around, added a sort of whole new sort of section of filters so that we could filter through, so people could see who was still open, who was offering online shopping, who was doing deliveries, which pubs were doing takeaways. So we really repurposed that, and there was definitely a kind of sense that people wanted to support local businesses. And I think we started seeing much more traffic coming through to those shopping pages and the hospitality pages than we probably would do normally, certainly in comparison to the events pages. Also, we've set up during the first lockdown a series of Q&As with some local businesses, just to kind of give them a little bit of exposure, and just to sort of see how they were coping with lockdown. And again, we had quite a good response. We did 12 Q&As, and that sort of ranged between market traders, there were some retailers and some hospitality, so it was a good range of businesses. And actually, if anything, this has really kind of enabled us to reach out to lots more businesses. We've added on a huge number of businesses to the Discover Freedom website since the first lockdown. And then when the end of the first lockdown happened, everything changed again, and we kind of got rid of some of those filters. And then we started promoting the Eat Out to Help Out scheme. So again, contacting all the hospitality people to see who was offering what. And I think that's kind of about it in terms of what Discover Freedom's in the sort of first part of it. So Laura, if you could move on to the next slide. So whilst everywhere was still open, we then moved on to Five Fest. And again, I think there was a kind of continuing sense of people wanting to support local shops. So we had a really good uptake on that. And I think we've got there 39 businesses joined in. And it was, some people who have done it before, but we had a lot of new people taking it up, and it was a good range again of people. We had a couple of people that are only online as well. So I think they realised that Discover Freedom is quite a good place to be seen. Can we go on to the next one? Oh, Christmas. So obviously we had the next lockdown. So Discover Freedom changed again. And everyone had yet another email from me saying, what are you doing? Are you doing online? Are you open? Are you closed? So we updated all of that. And then we decided that we needed to offer something, especially to people like market traders who would normally be in out of the Christmas markets at this time of year. So we went for two options, because why just have one Christmas market when you can have two? So we had the sort of makers market on Discover Freedom, which is very much for people that make and sell their own produce. But we were also very aware, especially from sort of local Facebook groups, that there are a lot of people in Freedom who have little businesses, and whether they make and sell or buy and sell, a lot of them are just online. So we've set up this Facebook group, which now has 143 stores as of this evening, and about 1,200 members of the group. Looking at some reports actually this evening on the Facebook group, it's, lots of people are actually profiting from it. They are making sales from the group. And again, we've now got about 100, did write it down because I knew I'd forget, about 120 businesses on the Facebook market that we probably didn't know about before. Those are sort of mainly online people who have Etsy shops or just sell via Facebook. And that includes people sort of doing reps for Body Shop and those sort of places. So that's also got us, I've set up another filter on the Discover Freedom website for a sort of not on the high street section. So, and gradually starting to add a lot of these businesses onto the Discover Freedom, so they still have a presence even when the Christmas market is over. I think that about covers that. And then what have we got on the last slide, Laura? Oh, pretty much what I've just talked about. Oh, I didn't mention the Froome Elfie Challenge. If you're out and about, there is an elf who's lurking in the different shops around town. He's in a different shop every day. If it goes according to plan, he's supposed to be in a different shop every day. I think it's happened so far. And again, it's just to try and encourage people out into the streets again. Laura, can we go on to the last one, I think? Next steps. Maybe Viv or Rachel might want to talk about busking, but just quickly, the annual again, hopefully it will get published. Obviously didn't get published this year because of lockdown. So we'll be looking at doing that in the early new year. And also, I've had an inquiry recently about a travelling art exhibition, which is hopefully going to come to Frome next year or the year after, hopefully next year. But they're looking to use sort of unconventional places to display their art, primarily shops, hopefully. So that's going to be, could be really interesting. So I'm waiting to hear a bit more detail about that and what sort of space they need. But I think that could be really good for the town. Yeah, I think that's about it, really.
Excellent. Thank you very much, George, and thanks, Viv, for that update. Really appreciate what you guys are doing in this area. I'll throw out to colleagues for questions and comments. Rich, please, then Sheila.
Yeah, Quickie, it's great what you're doing. It's fantastic. I love the Facebook high street shop stuff. It's fantastic. Really, really good. Been really popular. It's a really nice way for people to shop online, shops they normally wouldn't see. So keep it up. Brilliant.
Excellent. Thanks, Rich. I've got Sheila, then Anne, please.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you very much for that. It's always good to hear those things, you know, the background to some of the work that we see, but you know, getting an update from you and Viv were great, George. The thing that I was going to follow up on was the two shops that are closed down now in the precinct, the Peacocks that never really opened, and M&Co that is now closed. They've got fantastic sort of shop frontage that could actually take a really excellent art exhibition, I would imagine. And I've been thinking about maybe putting some of the displays from the museum, which can't open, but could be as a sort of display in that sort of shop. Or the other place, obviously, is the shop that just looks horribly derelict by the bus stop as you come into from Bath, the bus stop in the centre of town. It would be great to have something there that makes it look like Frome is a great place to be, because at the moment it's just a dark hole with piles of rubble inside, which is a great shame.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sheila. I mean, we had been liaising quite closely with the architect who had been taking on the Shoe Zone shop, and it stalled and then it just stopped. But you're great. They are great front spaces, and we've got a good relationship with the management company for Westway, so we could look at doing something with the old, what's not even the old Peacocks and the old
when I asked last time, they hadn't got the keys apparently, and I think one of the Rotary clubs were hoping to use the M&Co shop. But anyway, they've just got such great frontages. It would be really useful.
Would it be? I appreciate Andrew Prince is quite active in that area. Is that somebody we can be talking to in this area?
Yeah, it was him I was talking to, but it's worth updating because it might have all changed by now.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sheila. Thanks, Viv. I've got Anne, then I've got Anita, then Andy W, please. And we can't hear you, although you don't appear to be on mute.
Sounds like you're running a bath.
No, we can't hear you at all. Sorry about that. Anita, please.
Yeah, I just really wanted to commend Viv and George on the work you're doing with the businesses. I think absolutely wonderful, fantastic stuff. And I also wanted to say a huge thank you to Rachel and Becky and the comms team, because as I do my weekly walkabouts, talking to all the businesses, the number of times I hear people say, and thank you so much to the council for all you're doing to support us. It's lovely to hear. And I think, you know, as a couple of teams here, you really put out an excellent example of how we can support local business. So I just wanted a big thank you from me, really.
Thanks, Anita. Before I come to Andy, I just want to jump in on that as well, because we had the Chamber of Commerce committee meeting last night, which we have on a monthly basis. For those that don't know, attendees that may not realise, I sit on that committee as an observer from FTC. One of the things that has been constantly sort of fed back to me is how well FTC, and obviously particularly Rachel and Becky and Viv and George have done in terms of the comms and the work they're doing with businesses. It's getting to the point now that Pauline, who is the current president, will openly say, look, what are you guys doing? We'll piggyback on it with you, and we'll be quite happy to contribute to it because you do it better than we can. So from a feedback point of view, it's fantastic work, guys, and we really appreciate it. Viv, I would like to touch base with you about events for next year, because things like Discuss and Do and the business lunches that we would have had planned, I think we can probably join those up a little bit so that we can actually do some joint stuff. In terms of the festival, the feedback from the committee last night was, I don't know if we're going to be able to commit to it to 2021, just on the basis that I don't know whether or not we're going to be out of this sort of restricting the environment. We might need to push it back, but let's keep those channels of communication open, and work together as we have been, because it's great.
Thanks, Andy.
Andy, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo everything everyone said. Really great work, amazing stuff, really inspiring. Yeah, I think Steve mentioned it. Tim Fielding is the good guy to speak to down at Westway. Buildings owned by Maybrook. I'm sure you know that already, though. But I love Sheila's idea about using the, especially in the tunnel area, leading up to the taxi rank on the left. There could be some really great museum pieces. If you choose the right stuff, it could be a really good addition. But yeah, no, just great work. And if you need any help with anything in there, I'm in the co-op, so give me a shout and I can rally some people for you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andy. That's really appreciated. Do we have any other questions or comments from colleagues? Fantastic. Well, on that basis, I guess the only other thing to ask is, do we have any other business at this point? Everyone's sort of shaking their heads, which is great. Fantastic. Then we'll... I'm just checking out what Rich has got there. Okay, before I call the meeting to close, I'd just like to say one thing. I think we've had a couple of items on the agenda this evening that have been quite passionate, in that councillors have had varying opinions. I'd like to say thank you to colleagues tonight, because although there's been some quite strong debate, I think it's been really civil, and I think it's a strength of a group of independent councillors that we can have different opinions, but we can actually come to a consensus. So I'd like to thank you all very much for that. And look forward to the next time we have a Town Matters Committee. So thank you all for coming tonight, and look forward to seeing you all again.
Happy Christmas.
Well done, Andy.
Well done, Andy.
Thanks,
Good
Andy.
night.
Good night.
Cheers.